Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome in day three of this SC100 Microsoft Cybersecurity Architect training. My name is Saurabh Srivastava, and here we are for the day three session. Before starting this day three session, let's see what we have in day two, what we have covered in our day two session. So here in day two, we covered different topics moving around design solutions for regulatory compliance. We're talking about regulatory compliance concepts, what we have in Microsoft Purview, what we have in Microsoft Priva, how we can use user policy to address security and compliance requirements, what is Microsoft Defender for Cloud. These are all things we were discussing here under this topic. Now, next is design security for identity and access management. We covered this one as well. And we're talking about what we have in identity and access management, what different kind of options we have, like designing a solution for access to software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, hybrid, on-premises, and multi-cloud resources. We were also discussing about how we can protect Active Directory domain services, especially for identity-related attack patterns. And for that, we have Microsoft Defender for Identity. We also discussed about if we are planning for external identity solution design for B2B and B2C, what options we have there. We discussed about conditional access, how conditional access is aligned to zero trust, what kind of options we have to secure workload identities, and what is Key Vault, what different kind of options we have in Key Vault, and what we can do to follow the best practices. These all things we discussed in our day two session. And these all topics, these were for the homework. I'm pretty much sure you have completed these all homework. So if in case, if anything is pending, don't forget to complete these homework along with our discussions in your free time, because this will give you more understanding related to what we are discussing every day. So here we have homework for the same topics: design solutions for securing privileged access, design solution for security operations, and these topics again moving around what we have in compliance and regulatory things, what we have in Microsoft Intra ID, including intra privileged identity management, entitlement management, access reviews, and many other discussions. In security operations, here you'll find topics related to SIEM, SOAR, XDR, what we have in security workflows, what we have in Azure policy, and some more understanding related to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and some lab activities. If you have completed, it's great. Now, what we are going to cover today in day three session, we have again two more topics. So design solutions for securing Microsoft 365. Here we talk about what kind of Defender XDR solutions we have. So first of all, we will see evaluate security posture for productivity and collaboration workloads by using metrics. Then we talk about design solutions for securing Microsoft 365 components. And here in this design security for securing Microsoft 365 component, we have XDR solution. So in this, the main topic is XDR. What comes in XDR? What different kind of XDR solutions we have, like Defender for Office 365, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for Endpoint, Vulnerability Management. These all things we'll see here. Then we discuss about design configurations and operational practice for Microsoft 365. Then we discuss about what comes in evaluate solution for securing data in Microsoft 365 using Purview. Especially for data protection, what we have in Microsoft Purview, we will discuss here. We'll also discuss about what options we have in Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 services, especially for security and compliance. Then we discuss about evaluate solutions that include Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. and evaluate device management solution that include Microsoft Intune. These are different topics that we cover here. Then after we have design solution for securing applications. This is what different kind of topics you see here. These are mainly moving around what we have in application security. What kind of options we have to implement standard to secure application development, security posture for existing application portfolios. We'll discuss about this. Also, we'll discuss about API management security, application security requirements, and the important thing, design solution that secure applications by using application web application firewall, Azure web application firewall, WAF. So what we have in this, we'll talk about one by one. But definitely, here we have homework activity that we have to complete. So in your free time, you will be completing these activities that is mainly related to design solution for securing an organization's data. Here you complete introduction to data security, design a solution for data discovery and classifications using Microsoft Purview. You also see topic related to encryption of data at rest in transit, including Azure Key Vault and infrastructure. Then data security in Azure workload, security for Azure storage, and what kind of defender options we have for SQL and storage. You'll see here in this homework activity. You have some lab exercises for security where we have exploring security operations center, shadow IT, managing external attack surface. These are all things you see there. So don't forget to complete homework activity in your free time. Definitely, this is going to help you in more understanding around these topics. Now let's start with what we have in today's session in day 3. So learning path is design security solutions for applications and data. And this is the main topic, design solutions for securing Microsoft 365. In this, we'll go for this topic first, evaluate security posture for productivity and collaboration workloads by using methods. So when we talk about Microsoft security, especially for Microsoft 365, we have a secure score portal, very similar to Compliance Manager, what we were seeing in Microsoft Purview portal. We have Microsoft Secure Score Portal. The Secure Score Portal scans, assess your entire Microsoft 365 environment and gives you detail, gives you information about what kind of current security posture you have, what kind of security loopholes are missing, what kind of security controls are there, what kind of challenges you have, what are missing. So using these kind of different recommendations, what is coming from Microsoft, you can use this to fix these kind of issues in your organization and you can enhance security posture. Basically, these recommendations are designed in 4 components: identity, device, applications, and data. These are 4 categories. And you see a score here, that what is score you are achieving right now based on the current posture of your organization. This is very helpful. This will be keep adding, like for example, in this current slide, you can see here we have different kind of informations. To address, we have 146 actions are there. But this number of actions that you can address, this may be increasing or decreasing depending on what services or features you are disabling or enabling in your current organization. But it's very helpful. You have to go to Microsoft Defender portal and there you find the secure score page to see what different kind of improvement actions or recommended actions we can enhance, we can complete to enhance the security posture. Now, when we talk about Defender XDR solutions, so basically in Microsoft Defender XDR family, we have different kind of Defender products. We have Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office 365, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for this Defender vulnerability management. These are different kind of Defender components that we can use to protect different kind of services and different kind of features. So what are these? What kind of options we have? We'll talk about. So for these management, we have a dedicated portal. We call it Microsoft Defender XDR portal that you can access either by directly going to security.microsoft.com URL, or you can log into Microsoft Admin Portal, Microsoft 365 Admin Portal, and there you can find Security Admin Center, or you can say Defender Admin Center. So what benefits we get here? Let's talk about. So first of all, when you talk about Defender for Office 365, this is mainly designed for email and basically email attachments, links, what you receive, these kind of protections you will see here in Defender for Office 365. But when we talk about email security, by default in every Microsoft 365 plan, we get EOP, Exchange Online Protection by default. Exchange Online Protection is a kind of email security option that gives you a list of protection for your emails. That protections are related to checking email for malware, for viruses, domain reputations, content blocking, and many other different kind of capabilities here we have in EOP. But in EOP, we have some limitations. The one limitation is Exchange Online Protection is not capable of behavior-based analysis. For example, if I'm sending any malicious email with malicious attachment, and that attachment is going to received by my EOP system. If attachment is malicious, in that situation, EOP will not be detecting in this malicious attachment here. Because sometimes attachment will be activated once it will be delivered. So EOP is not capable to detect malicious attachment in email or any web link. So for that, what we do, we extend our EOP protection by using Defender for Office 365. So especially this Defender for Office 365, this is the added, you can say, as a kind of add-on license that we have to purchase. But if you're using E5 license in Microsoft 365, so by default, this will have this kind of capability already included. But for E3 or any other lower plan, you have to add this Defender for Office 365 manually, like purchase it and then add in your tenant. Now here, what we have, Defender for Office 365 gives you behavior-based analysis. It means any attachment, any link that will be scanned for general data, general email related security by EOP. And then after this will be handed over to Defender for Office 365. Defender for Office 365 will scan your email attachments and links in a sandbox environment. That sandbox you can call detonation chamber. So this scans, and if these attachments or these links found malicious, so this will be discarded, and the email, what is containing only the message body, that would be delivered to the user. Also, notification will be sent that attachment and links has been blocked. So this kind of protection we see in Defender for Office 365. If you are using E5 license, you can simply enable it by using Microsoft Defender portal. And if you don't have, then you can use this or you can add this as add-on. Now, let's move to the next. Now here in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, this is another Defender product in this family. And this is specifically designed for the application security. Now in this application security, what kind of benefits we have, let's understand. So we have SaaS applications, software as a service applications. We have OneDrive, we have Dynamics, Power Applications, Azure, Yammer, SharePoint, Office applications, many different applications we have. Now, if anybody is accessing these applications and performing some malicious activity, in this case, what kind of security options we have in this? Because malicious activity can be performed inside the application as well while accessing it. Maybe user is very safe. User is not, using any kind of, you can say, maybe user is using the valid ID and password. There's no challenge in that authentication or authorization. Now in this, if you are seeing maybe by the device or platform, some malicious activities are happening in that application. So there should be a kind of application that will defend the product that should detect these kind of behavior. And this will be definitely going to detect and prevent these kind of things. So for this, Microsoft has created Defender for Cloud Apps. So if your applications are connected to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, so this will monitor these applications traffic. And if there's any kind of malicious things has been found, this will raise the alarm, alert. And you can create policy as well that if any kind of malicious activity has been performed, then what kind of governance actions you want to take. Like you want to block the application, you want to block the user, suspend the user in Office in Microsoft 365, or you want to suspend the user in Active Directory system in your Azure environment. So these kind of governance actions you can take. Also, this Defender for Cloud Apps you can use for analyzing your firewall or proxy web traffic. In any organization, if we have firewall or proxy, and my users are using internet using that, so definitely that firewall and proxy will be generating a kind of traffic log at what applications are being used by the user in this organization. That traffic log we can export and we can upload to the Defender for Cloud Apps that will give you information about which all different applications are being used or utilized by user. And because we have a kind of application risk scoring in Defender for Cloud Apps, here we have a catalog of more than 37,000 plus applications with their risk scores. You can easily identify that which applications are safe in your organization and which applications are not safe based on the traffic log what you have uploaded in this Defender for Cloud Apps. So these kind of capabilities you see. This can discover SaaS application for production. This provides SaaS security posture management, SSPM. Information protection is there. If malicious informations are going to be exposed, we can integrate DLP in this. We have continuous threat protection. We have advanced threat protection options here. App to app protection with app governance. You can decide what you want to control with Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps policies that you can create. So this is a great tool, a great Defender option, especially for the SaaS applications. And next, we have Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. What we have in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, let's understand. In Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, this is specially designed for Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, iOS, and IoT devices. You can detect vulnerabilities, issues, challenges, attack patterns, exploits to your devices, and you can protect them as well. So this MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, gives you different kind of solutions. We get threats and vulnerability management. We get attack surface reduction. We get next generation protection options. We get endpoint detections and response. We get automated investigations and remediation. And if in case you need Microsoft experts help, so you can get dedicated Microsoft threat experts help here to analyze issues and challenges what is detected by Defender for Endpoint. And this is very helpful. So especially for this, what we do, we have to onboard our devices in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. In onboarding process, we have many different ways, like we can run scripts to our devices to onboard devices in this MDE. We can use group policy options. We can use Intune. We can use configuration manager that we are using in on-premises. We can use that one as well to register our devices. Once devices are registered, MDE using sensors, it will start scanning our, you can say a continuous monitoring will be started. And if there's any kind of challenge, this MDE is going to detect to the devices. This will be raising the tickets, raising incident and alerts, and also providing information in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint portal. So this is very helpful. So for endpoint protection, we can use this Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Now, what next we have? We have Microsoft Defender for Identity. In MDI, as we're talking about, this MDI is related to providing security for your on-prem Active Directory system. In your on-prem Active Directory system, you will be using some MDI sensors. These MDI sensors will be installing to our ADFS system, to our domain controller machines. So if there's any kind of attack pattern we have in our ADFS system or in our domain controller, this will send signals to Microsoft Defender for Identity portal in dashboard, and we can detect it. Then after, we can plan how I want to protect my domain controller and ADFS system using this Defender for Identity option. So this is good in case if you're in hybrid model and you want to protect your on-prem identity systems as well. Now moving to the next, we have Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management. Basically, this is the part of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, where when you onboard the devices like Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, iOS, and other devices, this will provide information about what kind of vulnerabilities we have in that devices. What kind of vulnerabilities we have, how we can prevent these vulnerabilities, how we can deploy different kind of patches to resolve these vulnerabilities, that information you see. So not only the monitoring, but you see the remediation related suggestions as well. So this by default comes with MDE, and you can use this to look into the vulnerabilities. Like for example, in my corporate devices that is based on Windows, Mac, or Linux, if we have vulnerabilities, this will give you that information. Now, what next we have? So you can find all these in your Defender portal. So especially, this is Defender for Endpoint option. This is Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365, where we have email and collaboration, Defender for Cloud apps. Also, you see on an endpoint, you get vulnerability management option. So we use this Microsoft Defender portal to perform these different kind of changes and activities. Now, what next we have? We have Microsoft 365 Copilot component. Basically, you can say Copilot for security integration. So if you are using Security Copilot, and if you have onboarded this Security Copilot in your organization, so this gives you two different experience. The one, you can go to the dedicated Security Copilot admin page, and there you can perform investigations with the help of this AI system. And another one is embedded experience. In embedded experience, if you go to any incident, if you open that incident properties tab, you find Copilot is already integrated here. So with the help of this, you can not only summarize this incident, but analyze it. You can also see the recommendations. You can generate reports for this. Many activities you can perform using the Security Copilot. But here, right now, Security Copilot is designed for analyzing the incident alerts, but it's not designed for automatically remediating all these kind of alerts and incidents without any approval. So right now, this is for the analytics. This is for analysis, not for the auto activity. So this is something that can be integrated in Microsoft Defender XDR. And this is very helpful. And this saves lots of time if you are investing time in these kind of incident and alerts, if you're analyzing them manually. So moving towards more topics here, we have design configurations and operational practices for Microsoft 365. What we have in this? Let's understand. So when we talk about deploying Zero Trust for Microsoft 365, mainly there are three main, we can say, stages or three main categories, starting with Zero Trust Foundation, then defend against threats, and protect and govern sensitive data. In Microsoft 365, everything starts with basic foundation, basic Zero Trust Foundation, where we protect identity and we start onboarding the devices. We enroll devices, we configure compliance policies. We also configure cloud identities, hybrid, PHS, PTA, depending on what I want to use. We enable, you can say, conditional access policies, MFA. These all things comes under in a very basic level foundation. Then moving towards next, we start focusing on deploying Defender products. In Defender products, like we have Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud Apps. So we start deploying these kind of Defender components wherever this is applicable and valid. In the next, protect and govern sensitive data. Now here we start working on how we can protect our data. So information protection and data governance comes under this. So applying information protection, data sensitivity, labeling, retention, these all things comes under in protect and govern sensitive data at this stage. In this way, we move towards higher and higher zero trust based requirements and zero trust aligned implementation. Now, so let's see in the next. So basically we start with, the starting point should be identity. From identity, we have to look into that how we can secure identity. So there we have many different options. We can use like starting with MFA, conditional access, creating identity, depending on what different kind of authentication methods you want to use. These all things we can figure. So in any company, in a starting point, we can go for require enabling multi-factor authentication, MFA, when sign-in risk is medium or high. We can enable password, basically, we can enable approved applications. Also, only registered phone, tablet devices will be able to use applications. And in case if you want to achieve application level 2, so for that you have to basically ask to your device management team to implement app protection policy level 2. And then after you can use this in your conditional access. So your Intune management team, they will be enabling this application level 2 or level 2 application protection in your organization. Now, what next we have in this? Now, when you're looking for endpoint management, definitely endpoint management is very important. The second stage where you register the devices, you manage your endpoint using Intune, you register them, you start using Microsoft Defender for endpoint components to secure the devices. So for that, at enterprise level, where you are going to target different kind of devices, enterprise components, you can definitely go for enabling MFA. It doesn't matter where the risk is low, medium, and high, because you are going to consider low risk as well, even you want to detect it and you want to target it. You always need approved application. Application level 2 is very important here. Also require compliant PC and mobile devices. For all that, you have to define policies. The next is, then we start moving towards, like for identity and for endpoint, for data, we start using Defender components. So wherever is possible and applicable, we use Defender for Office 365, Defender for cloud apps, Defender for identity, Defender for endpoint, Defender for you can say identity in case if there is any kind of requirement for ADFS and ADDS servers. Threat protection in the backend, where we have conditional access, MFA. These all things are going to be part of these kind of security environment. Now, so these things we have to plan how we are going to basically configure, how we are going to use it. We have to look into these kind of solutions wherever this is applicable according to the organization, enable and use it. Now, so here you can say not only the Defender components, but then what we do, we also plan for the data protection. And for data protection, we plan for what we have in deploy a Microsoft Purview information protection solutions. So in Microsoft Purview, we have data protection options as well. And there are lots of features I'll talk about in next. These data protection options we are going to discuss about. So along with other options like for identity protection, endpoint protection, also applications, infrastructure protection, we should plan for data protection. And for that, we can plan for Microsoft Purview information protection solutions. Yeah. So here, when we talk about securing data in Microsoft 365 using Microsoft Purview, what we have. So in this, we have many different solutions available here. These are, you can see in the top order, you can see we have different kind of security solutions, basically the compliance solutions that we can use for data protection. So here we have DLP, data loss prevention, data security posture management, information protection, insider risk management, information barrier policies, privileged access management. These all things are very helpful when you are considering the data security. So what we have in these, let's talk about. So first of all, when you talk about information protection is something where we first of all, we classify the data and we use labeling. We apply labels to our data along with the encryptions and the access control. So we can use label not only to encrypt the data, but we can control access. For example, I want to share our data with one of my colleague, but I want that person will be only able to maybe only read the document, not modify, not change anything in that. In that situation, this can be controlled using information protection. I can control watermarking. I can mark the document. I can classify the document, encrypt the data. These all things we can achieve in information protection. But information protection is designed for encrypting the data, access control, and marking, content marking. But this is not designed for controlling the sharing. If you have oversharing or data exposure, you want to stop that. You want to stop that overexposure or any kind of data sharing activity, in that situation, information protection will not help. For that, we have to implement DLP, data loss prevention. DLP is designed for protecting your data based on sensitive info type you can configure. And what you will get benefit of this DLP where DLP can protect your data over exposure. Like I want, if there's any specific keyword is there in my document, in my email, in my data, so that data should not be enabled for sharing. So in that situation, what we can do, we can configure DLP policies. The good thing is DLP policy not only works with Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, but this also works with Defender for Cloud Apps, Power Applications, and also with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So you can create policy once and you can apply this policy to many places. So to control any kind of data overexposure or any kind of sharing activity, you can use this DLP option here. Now what next we have? We have data security posture management, DSPM. Basically, DSPM is the inbuilt part of Purview solutions, where this monitors cross-cloud data and user risk based on different kind of reports and identifies the vulnerabilities in your data, and this will take action to enhance security. So it's a kind of inbuilt part of the different kind of security solutions and compliance component. Actually, we don't get any kind of dedicated option to configure this, but this is already there in place. Then we have insider risk management. So this is important to understand that not only external attack, but sometimes we get a very critical situation. We face that because of internal users are attacking to the organization's data. So if we see malicious insider, so question is how to detect that. To detect malicious insider, we have insider risk management. This basically works with kind of, you can see we have a design here. This works on different kind of indicators. So we configure indicators. These indicators, they keep monitoring the user behavior across applications, across services, and gives you report on that we have found some malicious activity related to data theft, related to data maybe exfiltration. So you will get this kind of report, this kind of alert. And definitely what you can do, you can and then decide how you want to proceed with this. If you want to go for example, sending only the warning message to the user that we are detecting your abnormal behavior, or maybe you want to block the user, or you want to control the access. So these things you can control in this kind of insider risk management. Now, apart from this, we have information barrier. What comes in information barrier? So information barrier is a kind of feature where we can disable communication. By default, this supports Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive for business. So for example, in my company, I have many different departments like C-level manager departments, sales, marketing, IT, R&D, HR, accounts. By any chance, if I want to block the communication between some departments, for example, I want R&D team will be only communicating to the C-level team, not to any other team. In that case, how I can do this? So to disable communication between different departments, between different sections of your organization, what you can do, you can use information barrier policy. So we can restrict communication. Question is why this information barrier policy is not for email. So in email, we don't use this information barrier policy to restrict email communication. For that, we use transport rules. For that, we use basically you can say mail flow rules. Mail flow rules or transport rule, both are the same thing. So if anybody who is managing Exchange environment, Exchange Online, so to disable communication, email communication, they use transport rules or mail flow rule instead of information barrier policy. Now, what next we have? Privileged access management. Now for privileged access management, this is something that is how we are going to control. Basically, this gives you option for granular access control in your this compliance environment. Not only providing, so sometimes what happens, we provide the full access to any service. But what if I can control a specific item inside the service, a specific access inside the service that comes under privileged access management. Now here I want to correct one thing, like for DSPM, we have a dedicated tab that we can configure. But for privileged access management, this is already included in your permission page or permission tab. So that's why we don't have a dedicated tab for this. So this is a kind of correction here. I was in that kind of mindset. So this is not available directly, but this is DSPM is already there as a dedicated tab. Now, what next we have? So when we talk about information protection, from where we start? So for information protection, first of all, you have to understand what kind of data you have in your organization. And for that, we follow the know your data phase. In know your data phase, we have data classification. For data classification, we have sensitive info types. These options we get under information protection. So basically there we have classifiers. In classifiers, we have sensitive info types. Microsoft has already added around 326 different types of sensitive information types. That includes important data from different country, from different locations, specific keywords. That is already there in Microsoft Purview portal. So these sensitive info types, what is already there from Microsoft, we use them in DLP policy, in my information protection policy to identify my data in email, in documents, if I want to detect these things automatically. So we use this in different kind of policies. So by default, Microsoft has added their own sensitive info types. Also, they have trainable classifier. Trainable classifiers they have added, that is in number, if I'm not wrong, that is 114 trainable classifier they have added right now. So trainable classifiers are the keywords related to a specific kind of, like for example, HR department, IT department, bank statements. For these, we have this kind of trainable classifiers keywords are there that we can use to identify different documents or data. So these kind of sensitive info types, trainable classifier, or you can add your own data in sensitive info, and we have EDM exact data matches. Suppose if you have a list of data that is not, based on any pattern, so you can add this data in this sensitive info place as EDM exact data match. These options we have in know your data. So what it does actually, when you go to Content Explorer, right now this is known as Data Explorer. So when you go for this kind of Content or Data Explorer, this will give you information about what different kind of sensitive data you have in your organization based on what patterns we have already there in sensitive info types, in trainable classifier, and in EDM. Based on that, we can plan that what policy I have to create. Like I have to create information protection policy, I have to create DLP policy, I can plan accordingly. So first thing is to know your data, know what kind of data you have in your organization, what kind of data you have in place, and accordingly you can plan for it. For example, you are going to click on Content Explorer and you see in your company there is no secret data or any kind of sensitive data available. So there's no need to create any policy. But if I see there are more than 100 instances of credit card credit card data there, so for sure I should plan for the policy. So once I have this data available, what kind of data we have in my organization, this report available, then I can plan for information protection policy that comes under protected data. So what we do here, we create label. Basically, what are the labels? Labels are encryption and access control that we can apply to the data. So there are two options. The one, I can create label, and that label I can present to my user. So when they are going to compose any email, they are going to draft any kind of documents or any information, they can use these labels manually. They can apply the label to their documents and emails. The second option is I can apply label to my data and documents automatically, but based on some matching pattern. And when we apply label automatically, for that case, we bring this sensitive information here in my policy to match the pattern. Suppose I have a label and I want to apply this label to all the places where I get credit card data details. So for that, what I have to do, I have to create a policy where label will be there, and then we add sensitive info type, that is credit card. So these sensitive info data we use everywhere, wherever we are looking for auto detections. So we create label, we bring this, we can expose this label to my user for manual application, or we can use sensitive info type based policy or auto labeling, where this will be automatically applied to your organization's data and securing the information. Also, further, to stop sharing, we can use DLP, data loss prevention, that comes under prevent data loss scenario. So for this prevent data loss, what we have in prevent data loss, DLP policy we can create, and DLP policies are always automatic. Automatic means they will be always using some matching patterns and applying to the data and documents automatically. Not like label that we can also apply as manual. DLP is always applied automatically to all the locations what you select in the policy creation. So while creating the DLP policy, the first thing what you select, the matching pattern, what matching pattern you want to target, and what restrictions you want to apply to that data. So for example, if I want to apply a permission kind of DLP policy, that if policy is going to found anything like, if this is going to find anything, for example, maybe any information related to GDPR, like maybe European TIN numbers. So I can create a policy targeting GDPR pattern, and I can configure DLP policy that please block this email data whenever EU GDPR related data is being detected. So the first thing what we select, the pattern. Once the pattern is selected, then we create policy. It means DLP policy will be always applied automatically. Now, what next we have in this? So in this way, like information protection options, we have DLP options, we can enhance security for my data. So next is evaluate data security and compliance controls in Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 services. What we have in this? Let's see. Now, what is Microsoft 365 Copilot? and how we can enhance security. So Microsoft 365 Copilot is a kind of generative AI solution that we can use by purchasing the license. And when we assign this license to our users, to the user accounts, they will have this Copilot option available in applications. They can use this Copilot to enhance their productivity, like they can create documents, create PowerPoint presentations, analyze Excel sheets, draft email, plan projects in loop using Copilot to gather information from the internet. These all things you can achieve using this Microsoft 365 Copilot. But what about security? Suppose in my company, there's a user and that user is denied to access a project that is project X. Whenever user is trying to access project X, it gives error that you are not authorized to access project X information. What if company assigned Copilot license to that user and now user is going to ask to Copilot, please provide me the detail about project X? Is this something that Copilot will bypass your security or your restrictions and give you the data about project X? Answer is no. So whenever we assign the license to any user in Copilot, Copilot always respect your security and compliance policy or whatever you have already implemented in your organization. It means if any user is not able to access any data directly, so even via Copilot or even using Copilot, that person will not be able to access that data. Whenever the person will be accessing or the person will be trying to ask information about that, Copilot will return with answer that I don't have any idea about this. So Copilot is designed to respect all your security and compliance policy, including what different kind of compliance standards we have, GDPR, ISO, and many other, whatever you have implemented, what you are following. Copilot will respect all these kind of policies, all these implementations while providing the informations. So Copilot honors information protection controls using sensitivity label and encryption. Everything is in place. And there's no violation of any rule or any kind of, we can say, restrictions. So this is a great solution, is a great approach what Microsoft has implemented. That Copilot is very powerful, but it not means that Copilot will start using or misusing its own power and providing you the information that is not allowed to any user. This will never do that. Now, so what next we have? Now we are going to talk about design solutions for securing applications. Let's see what we have in application security. So when we talk about application security, what we have with this? First of all, in MCSB, in Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark under MDC, we have this DevOps security plane, that is DS. We have these recommendations are there. DS1, conduct threat modeling. DS2, ensure software supply chain security. DS3, secure DevOps infrastructure. DS4, integrate static application security testing into DevOps pipeline. DS5, integrate dynamic application security testing into DevOps pipeline. DS6, enforce security of workload throughout DevOps lifecycle. And DS7, enable logging and monitoring in DevOps. So in DevOps environment, we have lots of recommendations that we should implement. And if you are in a DevOps environment, because MDC In MDC, we can connect. In Microsoft Defender for Cloud, we can connect GitHub, Azure repositories, or this kind of DevOps environment. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud is not only designed to give you security recommendations for your infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, but this gives you security recommendations for these DevOps environment, or even AWS and GCP as well. So we get these options. We get these recommendations. So in these recommendations, what we get, let's see, what kind of components are there. So when we design and implement standards to secure application development, what we have in a kind of DevOps process. So what we have, DevSec operation is a part of DevOps process, DevOps activity. What this DevSecOps represents in a development life cycle, where developer, they plan and develop, they commit the code, they go for the next stage, build and test, then go to production and then operate. It's recommended at every stage you should have security testing. Now this is a kind of standard now these days, that every stage is governed by a different kind of security testing, security monitoring, and different activities we perform here to be sure that every stage is secure, code is secure during this process, and there's no issues or no challenges we are seeing. Because during the development, it's very easy to rectify the problems related to security issues and challenges and resolve them. Once anything is in operation, and then we are facing any challenge related to security, in that situation, it will be challenging. So for every stage, we have different kind of activities that comes under security or this DevSec operations. Like for plan and develop, we have threat modeling. We have many different kind of threat modeling options, different standards like Stride, OWASP. We have IDE security plugins that we can use to check security in plan and development phase. Pre-commit hooks, secure coding standards, and peer review. These are different kind of options that developers, they use for security testing. When they move to the commit the code stage, we get static application security testing options, security units and functional tests, dependency management, secure pipelines. Then we have build and test phase. Here, dynamic application testing and cloud configuration validation, infrastructure scanning, security acceptance testing. These are different kind of methods that developers or DevSec operations team, they use. Even in go to production phase, security smoke test, configuration checks, live site penetration testing. These all things we see that our security team, our red team is performing, they're doing it. Also in operations phase, when this is an operation, continuous monitoring, threat intelligence, penetration testing, blameless postmortems, these all different kind of activities. These kind of things DevSec operations engineers, they perform. So if you are not directly related to the development, maybe you'll be familiar with some components here, like maybe pen testing, threat intelligence, continuous monitoring, or maybe security smoke test. But for others, like that is a code development that is hidden, and this is specific to the different stages. Now here, we also see a plan where in any kind of development life cycle in a CI/CD pipeline, where developers are there using ID and pull request, then they are in the continuous integration, development, testing phase. What we can do for all these stages where applications are being developed, what we can do, we can go for, or we can use different kind of testing options, different kind of security testing options here. We have static code analysis, code review, work item linking, static code analysis, OSS vulnerability scan, or passive pen testing, infrastructure scan. And we can do something like this. We can say target, or we can create a kind of design where we are receiving feedback at every stage. Maybe we can collect all these incidents or informations in one place, and this will be helpful for developers to work on different stages and resolve these issues and challenges. It's not something that when ID and pull request stage is completed, then CI completed, then development completed, then testing in testing phase, we are receiving some issues. So only this is sending the feedback. No, feedback we can design, or this process we can design at every stage. So if we are receiving different kind of feedback here, so first we have to resolve this, then we move to the next. Then what different kind of feedback we are receiving here, then we move to the next. Then what we are receiving here, we resolve, then we move to the next. And finally, what kind of testing related recommendations or feedback we are getting, then we resolve all these here. These things comes under feedback loop consideration. Some more understanding in this, what we have. So DevSec operations security best practices. What we have in this, these are some kind of components that we should have in mind. We should consider it. Like for Microsoft Intra ID for SAML, we can use FIDO2 strong authentication wherever is possible. Try to integrate this FIDO2 in your DevSec operations security practice. Code spaces provide correctly configured IDE that are equipped with required security scanning extensions. So in the very first phase, we add ID extensions for security testing. That should be installed, that should be presented. GitHub Actions. We use GitHub or Azure repositories as a kind of place where we store our codes. So in this situation, what we have, we can add GitHub in MDC, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. When we have these kind of things in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, this will give you results of scanning that if GitHub repository is secure or not. If you have any vulnerability in that, if you have any coding error, these all informations, recommendations we see in MDC. Also, you can deploy your build artifacts to Azure App Services. Azure App Services is Microsoft's own native service. We get lots of monitoring, auditing, and security solutions here using MDC options for this Azure App Service. So it's a very good feature, enabling adding this GitHub in MDC and then deploying the artifacts to Azure App Services. This is very helpful from security and monitoring perspective. For pull request, trigger code builds and automated testing through GitHub Actions. Always follow this, like trying to trigger codes, builds, and automated testing. Use GitHub Actions there. Azure policies you can use to control or evaluate Azure resources. Then in MDC, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, we can use for identifying the applications and deployed projects. So don't forget to add GitHub in MDC and app services if you are using GitHub and app services for your applications. Then we have Azure monitoring. Azure monitoring differently tracks the behavior, monitors the applications. We can also use application insight for more in-depth monitoring. Key Vault, we can consider using Key Vault for keeping our secrets certificates safe And if there is any need, we can call the this key vault actually to access the credentials, access the certificates, access the tokens in any process, in any kind of deployment. So this is something that we should consider when we are talking about DevSecOps best practices. And next, you can see a kind of a summary in this slide using Defender for Cloud that is going to control not only DevOps security management, GitHub and Azure repository connectors, cloud security posture management. We can use these kind of security options here. In GitHub Advanced Security, we have code scanning, secret scanning, dependency review. These are all things we can achieve. So you should plan for security related to code spaces, GitHub repositories, GitHub Actions, also in Azure AD, app config, Azure monitoring. These are all things we should also consider in the management and planning. For further analytics, we can use Microsoft Sentinel to collect all these logs. If we are going to deploy container-based applications, so we can use Azure Container Registry. This we can also protect using MDC, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, because container scanning or infrastructure as a code scanning, these are all things we have available in MDC, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. But definitely we have to add these plans in our MDC usage. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud in DevOps, this gives you option to connect GitHub as a connector, Azure DevOps as a connector. Apart from Azure, AWS, and GCP, we can add these kind of DevOps connector to cover or to have a coverage on these as well. So these are different kind of options that we see here in this Defender for Cloud. So we can connect and we can see recommendations, security recommendations, regulatory compliance recommendations for these GitHub and Azure DevOps places as well. So this is very helpful. So not only targeting the multi-cloud environment, but DevOps environment, we can also target. The next is evaluate security posture of existing application portfolios. Now for this, what we have? So for existing portfolios, we can use Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. That gives you different kind of capabilities as we're talking about. You can connect your cloud applications as connector to analyze the real-time traffic and checking what kind of vulnerabilities and issues we have. We can also upload firewall or proxy logs, analyze these informations. Basically, this comes under cloud discovery. So we can go for this option. We can analyze this and we can see what kind of applications are safe, what kind of applications are not safe based on the application risk scoring. Also, we can use conditional access where this Defender for Cloud Apps can work as a kind of proxy to provide conditional based access to the applications. These are different things what we see here in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So we can consider this one as well when we are looking for SaaS protection. So this gives you basically this SSPM offer. So in this SSPM, you get secure score, we get recommendations for SaaS security, we get security configuration assessments that we can use to enhance security for these SaaS applications. We can follow these recommendations, what is missing. So some recommendations you find here in this Defender for Cloud Apps. Now what next we have? Evaluate application threats with threat modeling. So when you go for plan and deploy in very first phase or application deployment, application planning, we see there threat modeling. threat modeling is very important for any kind of developer, for any kind of organization, when they're planning for application designing or application development, you can say. So threat modeling is, you can say, a method where you are going to check what kind of development process you have, what kind of issues and vulnerabilities are possible there. And for that, we have different kind of models. Basically, threat modeling gives you detection of high potential impacts, high exposure to attack. You can identify applications that would have significant impact on the business if compromised in advance before deploying the application in production. You can also detect applications that are easily accessible to the attackers. Examples include web applications on the open internet. So using threat modeling, we can detect these things in advance, and we can code or redesign our applications for this. So threat modeling helps you to secure your system, applications, network, and services. It can help you to create a data flow diagram by understanding the importance of capturing requirements and assumptions. Also, this is very helpful in reduce or eliminate potential threats by learning about the security control categories. So we can detect these kind of vulnerabilities and challenges in advance, and we can be ready for this. Or we can code, we can enhance security in my application. So for this, what we have different kind of options. So in application threat analysis, what we do, we gather information about basic security controls, connection authenticated or not, applying least privilege or not, is app activity logged and fed into the SIEM solution or not for the further analytics. If my application is using some kind of threat modeling framework like Stride, OS. Basically, Stride is a kind of threat modeling framework developed by Microsoft itself. And this Stride is basically a short form of spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. These are 6 components, and their first letters we collect here as a name like Stride. Once again, spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. So these are 6 different activities that we perform here in Stride. Also, we have OWASP, Open Web Application Standard kind of things we have here. So basically, OWASP is a kind of, you can say, is a kind of organization, is open standard. So basically, OWASP stands for Open Worldwide Application Security Project. And they have standard or threat modeling standards for these kind of checking the security vulnerabilities or issues what we have. So they have their own threat modeling framework that you can use. So this is open, and this is from Microsoft itself. So if you want to read more about OWASP, you can go to the OWASP, Open Worldwide Application Security Project website, and you can read more on this. Also, we have to mitigate the identified threat. We can use defense in depth approach and least privilege to mitigate or to resolve challenges what we are detecting in any application threat modeling. Now, so in Microsoft threat modeling tool, what it does, it enables this enables communicate about security design of the system, analyzing design of potential security risks. You get suggestions on that. This gives you automation using a Stride per element, a Stride framework for threat modeling. The reporting we have, this is designed for developer and centered on software. focusing on design analysis. So this is stride we can use. Stride gives you these different kind of 6 elements that we can use in this kind of threat modeling and enhance security in this application development phase. What next we have? Here, we have designed security lifecycle strategy for application. What we see in this, let's understand. So when we talk about, application lifecycle, we can use Defender for Cloud Apps to manage application availability, where what we have using Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, what we see. First of all, we start with, you can say, we start discovering the application. We gain what kind of applications we have, discovery on that. We enable settings for them, how this will be available, our policies. We can configure real-time controls using policies. RBAC, in case if we want to control these kind of application management. We can create policy management, controlling what kind of behavior, what kind of data will be accessible and provided to the end user who's accessing it. Many different kind of components are involved in lifecycle management. So here, zero trust model. Zero trust helps organization to be sure that applications and data, what they have, this should be protected and available whenever there is a need. So using this Defender for Cloud Apps, we can see what different applications we have in organization. We can discover and control the use of shadow IT. We can protect sensitive info by applying policy like DLP. We can apply conditional access policies. We can also control governance. We can use governance like disabling user, suspending user in M365 in intro ID. We can enhance security related to different attacks in Defender for Cloud Apps, because this is specifically designed for application security. So consider using if you are planning to deploy a kind of application availability lifecycle in your organization. Now, what next we have? Application lifecycle management in Azure container application. Now, container applications, containerized application is a new concept. So we are using virtualization since very long time. Then, I can say containerization is not very new. At least, you can say we started using containerization very first time. We started using somewhere in the year 2013, 14 when it started. And since then, we are seeing lots of development in this. So instead of going for deploying application in a traditional approach, where we have virtual machines and the dependencies, libraries, and binaries, now we are deploying applications in a container form, in a container-based instances. So a container is a logical space where we deploy container application-based code. That code we can deploy rapidly. We can use orchestration here. Lots of benefits you see. So generally, when you deploy container application, this flow through 4 different phases. These phases are like deployment, then update, then deactivation, then shutting down. So what we get in this, let's see. When you start with deployment, what do you see? Generally, when we talk about container deployment, we use YAML manifests, YAML codes to deploy different kind of applications. So when you go for deployment, what do you see? A first version will be automatically created. First version. Now, what happens when you go for modifying it? Suppose you want to modify this container instance. What happens when you update any application is being updated? A new revision will be automatically created. You can say a kind of, just for understanding, a kind of snapshot will be created. And these all are in the active revision phase, active revision condition. And this will be keep happening till when there's any revision of the container app is not needed, so you can deactivate it. When you deactivate, this will be automatically moved to the inactive revision phase. You can also plan for after a certain time, or maybe the old version should be automatically deactivated in case there's any need. So these kind of options like deactivating these kind of revisions manually or automatic, these options you have here. Now what next we have in this? So when we talk about security requirements, do we have security requirements for containers? There is yes. Because containers are going to host the application code, there should be container security as well. And there are some kind of considerations that you should keep in mind, but for container security, we have Microsoft Defender for Cloud, MDC, where that covers your container-based deployment in cloud as well. But definitely you have to pay for that. MDC also includes the license, or you can say the component of container. If you enable it, this will start protecting and give you recommendations for your container-based deployment. Now here, what we do as kind of best practice considerations is says store and retrieve images from private registry, such as Azure Container Registry. Now here the question is, what is registry? What happens in container-based deployment? What we do? We use YAML manifest. YAML manifest is a kind of application code. Sometimes we call it image. Now what we do, we keep this image in a place from where we can pull these kind of images and we can deploy this in containers. So when you are keeping these images in these kind of different places, these places are known as registry. We have option that we can go for keeping our image in kind of in any open registry. We have Docker Hub community. There we can store these kind of images. Or in Microsoft natively, we have this Azure Container Registry, ACR. We can use ACR. This ACR we can create inside the cloud, inside Azure, and we use this to store our these kind of application images. So this is the first recommendation. The second is use solutions such as Microsoft Defender for Cloud to scan container images in a private registry and identify potential vulnerabilities. Using Defender for Cloud, you can detect the vulnerabilities in your container registry. in your images if there's any kind of challenge and issues. And this is very helpful. You get recommendations, you can resolve that vulnerabilities and issues, and your these kind of images will be safe for deployment. Another consideration is secure credentials for logins or API access. Always try to use secure credentials whenever you are going to use this for login or any API access in the container application. So this is something, some consideration you should have. Allow only approved container images and control the flow of container images. In your container registry, it not means that you should have a kind of hundreds and thousands numbers of images. Inside your container registry, there should be only approved images. Approved, that is approved by your container admins or approved by your Azure Container Registry owner. That person will approve these kind of images, and that would be related to the application where company is interested. Now, in case there's a need that our developer team, they are looking for a dedicated place where they are going to keep their all the researched product or researched images. In that case, we can create another container registry where they can keep their researched or test or maybe any kind of image that they are still creating or they are working on, they are testing it. You can go for different container registry in that situation. But the container registry that you are using to pull company's application, that should be containing approved application, and the limited and approved image should be there only. Then for security posture management, use Microsoft Defender for Container. That is a part of MDC. This gives you recommendations and gives you information that how you can remediate that issue. So these are some kind of recommendations that we have that we should consider when we are talking about container-based deployments. Now, what next we have in this? Let's understand. So for container orchestration, what we have? For container orchestration, we use Kubernetes. So when you want to automate, when you want to orchestrate container deployment, application deployment, so in that situation, we can use Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a kind of orchestration platform. Basically, it's a kind of open source system that is very well designed for automating the deployment, the scaling capabilities, you can say management of the containerized application. You can say it's a kind of orchestration platform. So here, when you enable Microsoft Defender for Container, Azure Kubernetes Service Cluster and Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes cluster protection are also enabled. It means when you enable this and using the container-based security options, so Kubernetes services, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes cluster, these all things will be also coming under this kind of security or protection option. Also, when you are enabling Microsoft Defender for Container, you can configure your Kubernetes data plane hardening, enhancing security in this, enhancing more advanced controls. So this is something good for security. You can enhance security. And if you are looking for orchestration, deploying the containers and applications, you can consider using AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services. So in this, If you're going to bring this MDC, you see you will get discovery, security benchmark, and Kubernetes policies, what you can implement, vulnerability assessment, and advanced protection. These all things you see in this Kubernetes and container-based security options. Now, what next we have in this? Let's see. When we design a solution for API management and security, here in Azure API management, mainly we have three components: a gateway, management plane, and the user plane, or you can say the developer portal. So if there's any access request, like from any place, from devices, from any access request that comes to the gateway, API gateway, you can say, and this will handle where and what different kind of solutions or services will be accessed. Now, from developer perspective, developers, they use developer portal and they connect to the management plane and they control, they manage different kind of, they use different kind of portals to manage what different kind of API related management they want. So here we have these components working together, basically any kind of API management plane that may be containing different services like insights, monitoring, front door, virtual network, key vault, event hub, event grid, and many other options. This kind of control plane we have, this kind of management plane we have for API management. And these all things work together to provide you application and data access. So in this, when we talk about this reference architecture in this server, basically for this API application, this API management, that is a kind of example of microservices. There are many components are involved, are working together. So we have Azure API management, function, virtual network, keyword, Cosmos DB, application insights. These are different components here. In API-M, that is Azure API management, there are different kind of mechanism that we use to protect the data set. Like we use gateway management, virtual network access restrictions we can deploy keyword key rotations for rotating the access. Also service access keys and connection strings we can configure. We can manage service identities in intro ID. These are all components we can consider when we are going to configure security for API management. These are some considerations that we can consider, we can keep in mind for enhancing these API security. And this is definitely based on the developers and at least the services which are going to use microservices here are based on microservices. We can consider these options. Now, what next we have in this? Here, design a solution for secure access to the applications. Let's see what we have in this. Now, in this, when we talk about design a solution for secure access to application, we have many things involved in this. So, first of all, when we talk about application security, where applications are exposed to the internet, and I want to enhance security for application, what we have? We have WAF, Web Application Firewall. Now, WAF is not a kind of separate component. WAF is a kind of component that is available in Azure Application Gateway and Azure Front Door. Now let's understand what comes in Azure Application Gateway and in Azure Front Door one by one. So first of all, Azure Application Gateway is a kind of regional component that we can use inside a region. And this we can use as a kind of load balancer. Azure Application Gateway we use as a load balancer, especially for web traffic. This mainly handles HTTP and HTTPS traffic. So we use this Azure Application Gateway especially as a kind of load balancer for my web traffic. And this can be used only in the regional component. For example, I have in the backend of this gateway, I have 3 application places, 3 application sources. So these all 3 should be in the same region where the application gateway is deployed. It's not something that I have Azure Application Gateway deployed in West US and my applications are in West US, in Japan data center, in Australia data center. We can't add Japan and Australia data center applications in my West US Application Gateway, because this only follows the regional components. So for my regional applications, all the applications that I want to add in my Azure Application Gateway, that should be inside the West US location, if my gateway is in the West US location. So we connect them as a backend here. And when any request comes to this based on the load balancing rule, this will be load balanced to the application interface in the backend. But question is, what about security? For security, in Azure Application Gateway, we have option that we can use a component, we call it WAF. WAF is a kind of option that is based on checkbox. You can enable it and disable it depending on the need. WAF stands for Web Application Firewall. So basically this WAF is based on OWASP standards. Again, the OWASP that we were talking under the threat modeling, OWASP also designed the standards for application security and attack patterns. So this web application firewall is based on that OWASP standards and protects your organization against many different kind of attack patterns. I'll talk about what different attack patterns generally we see. So we enable this WAF in Azure Application Gateway and we configure, we enable it. Preferably we have to pay for that in billing cycle. When you enable this feature, you have to pay this one in your Azure Application Gateway billing. And this is going to protect your web application interfaces in the backend against malicious attacks, different kind of vulnerabilities and challenges. Only authorized and valid request will be processed towards applications. But this is only for the regional component, because here we have Azure Application Gateway. We are enabling it in Azure Application Gateway. But what if I want to enable this application firewall at global scale? Suppose I have my application instances. One application instance is running in US, another is running in maybe in Norway, another one is running in Middle East somewhere, another one is running in Southeast Asia in Singapore, another instance is running in Japan and in Australia. If my organization application is a global application interface and this is deployed in different locations, different places all across the globe, can I use this Azure Application Gateway and using this web application firewall? Answer is no. In this case, we have option for Azure Front Door. You can say front door is exactly same as Azure Application Gateway, but where this is only working on regional level, this works on the global level. It means, yeah, so you can understand this here. So in place of this gateway that is regional based, if I use front door here, so I can connect in the back end, I can connect my different instances from different region, from different locations. This also gives you this WAF component inbuilt, so you can enable it. And now WAF is going, this will start working under Azure front door. Now in this situation, the request from the internet, this will come to the front door, and WAF will protect that kind of request, filtering it. Only good requests will be transferred to the backend instances. So just to revise it, just to summarize this, Azure Application Gateway and Azure Front Door both gives you WAF option. But Azure Application Gateway gives you WAF option only for the regional level because this is a regional component. Front Door gives you this WAF component available for the entire global component because Azure Front Door is a global component. So consider using this WAF in application gateway or Azure front door, depending on the design, depending on the coverage, what you have in your organization. Now, what next we have? So when we talk about WAF on Azure gateway, Azure application gateway, so here based on core rule set from OWASP, this will protect your organization. Now here, this is something where you have to create multiple policies, and they can be associated with the application gateway for load balancing. Basically, application gateway gives you path-based routing, different kind of listeners, HTTPS listeners you can create. You can configure domain-based routing as well here. These are different capabilities we have in application gateway. We can use application gateway for controlling or load balancing the traffic, especially that is based on HTTP and HTTPS. This operates as an application delivery controller. What requests should be delivered to which application backend that you can use, that you can basically utilize in application gateway activities. This offers TLS, transport and security, termination, cookies-based session affinity, round-robin load distribution, content-based routing, ability to host multiple websites, multiple domain options, and security enhancements. Azure Application Gateway is a very advanced device, advanced component that runs on OSI model layer 7 and gives you lots of benefits, lots of components in this. Now here, front door is a global and a centralized solution. We can enable WAF on front door if you have your application instances are distributed in different region. You can consider using front door, and there you can use this WAF, web application firewall. Definitely here we have to create policy, common rule set, custom rules that you can create. And basically these kind of different two modes we can select, detections and preventions. These are two different modes in WAF when you are going to use this in Azure front door. So here in this rule set, we can see different kind of protection we see, like cross-site scripting, Java attacks, local file inclusion, PHP injection attacks, remote command execution, remote file inclusion, session fixation, SQL injection protection, protocol attackers, session hijack. These are different kind of protection options we have in this WAF. It doesn't matter, this is being used in Azure front door or in Azure application gateway. In both places, you get these kind of protection. So you can create rule against these kind of activities. So this is all what we have planned in this day 3. And you have some homework activity here related to design a solution for securing an organization's data. Here you complete homework related to data security, what comes in data discovery and classifications in Microsoft Purview, evaluate solution for encryption of data at rest and in transit, including Azure Key Vault and infrastructure encryption, data security in Azure workload, security for Azure storage, Defender for SQL and Defender for storage. These all things you will complete, and with some lab activities. So for a quick summary, what we have completed so far. So in day 3, we completed discussion around design solutions for securing Microsoft 365. What comes in Microsoft Defender solution, Defender XDR, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365, vulnerability management, Defender for cloud apps. These all things we're discussing. Also, what comes in securing data in Microsoft Purview, how Microsoft Copilot, Security Copilot is going to help you in this. Also, we're talking about application security, what comes in threat modeling, what comes in security lifecycle strategy for applications, what we have in WAF, Web Application Firewall, if you're using this in Azure Application Gateway and in your web Azure Front Door. These all things we have completed so far in this day 3 lecture. So that's all for today. And I hope you have enjoyed this session. So I would say thank you so much for joining today's session. Thanks for listening. And definitely we'll again connect in our next session for day 4. And we will discuss about some more interesting topics. Day 4 will be basically at day 4, we'll complete all the discussions. And in day 5, we'll talk about the exam preparation. So once again, thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to complete the homework activity and have a nice rest of the day. Bye-bye for now.
Technology is moving fast. Closing the skills gap can help your team optimize and stay focused on what's ahead, rather than constantly playing tech catch-up. That's why it's important to keep Microsoft certifications active. Here's everything you need to know about renewing your team's certifications. We have introduced a free certification renewal process for role-based and specialty certifications to help you stay current with skills you need to remain up to date in your job role. Please note that the fundamentals certifications do not expire. In order to renew, you don't need to schedule and take an exam through Pearson VUE. Assessments are shorter than the exam. We encourage you to renew early, as soon as you are eligible. You won't lose time by renewing early, as the extension date is not based on the date that you choose to renew, but 1 year from certification expiration date. To access renewal assessment, you need to connect your certification profile to your Microsoft Learn profile only the first time. Once connected, you don't need to repeat this step in future to access renewal assessments. You can take the assessment as many times as you need. But after the second try, you will need to wait at least 24 hours before your next attempt. Embracing a growth mindset and the need for continuous learning can help you optimize and successfully perform in job roles. With a renewed Microsoft certification, globally recognized and industry-endorsed evidence of mastered real-world skills, you will also be able to demonstrate your proficiency in keeping pace with technology,